Taiwan's cabinet speaks out after being accused of targeting foreign-born citizens. Almost 100 politicians are under fire for allegedly helping Beijing influence Taiwanese voters. How to protect Taiwan in an attack? We unpack each presidential candidate's plans. Plus, schools look to tighten security after a recent fatal stabbing claimed a junior high school student's life. Welcome to another edition of TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao with 30 minutes of the latest. Thanks for joining us. Leading off with our top story, Taiwan has denied it is targeting Chinese and Southeast Asian immigrants in its investigations into election interference. That's as local media reported the cabinet had singled out these groups to monitor. Joyce Tseng reports.
A public misunderstanding at a time when fear of disinformation is at a high. Taiwan's cabinet has denied that it's been targeting Chinese and Southeast Asian immigrants and naturalized citizens after local media cited papers from the Justice Ministry that marked these groups as high-priority suspects in investigations into interference in Taiwan's elections, now just a little more than a week away.
它主要是为了说明中国介选的手段及样态，目的是要提醒国人多加注意，并没有针对特定族群的意思。
Many of Taiwan's so-called new immigrants are naturalized through marriage to Taiwanese citizens, with the biggest group coming from China. Though this group only make up a tiny fraction of the population, some will be able to vote in Taiwan's presidential and legislative elections on January 13th. The highly anticipated ballot has been subject to foreign interference, particularly from China, whose government rejects Taiwan's sovereignty.
This year, the information disputes by these troll accounts are more convincing and more aggressive.
With many people on high alert, analysts say the cabinet and justice ministry's ethnically charged snafu could damage public confidence.
我们现在在讲所谓的新住民，那很明显的就是针对着陆配。当然，事后亡羊补牢是没有错啦，哈，就是说，也许他正式对外里面就没有公布出去，但是都有人听到了啦。
With the heavy task of protecting its elections from foreign interference, Taiwan will need to manage such accusations of discrimination, as its democracy rests on all eligible voters, no matter where they were born. Howard Zhang and Joyce Sun for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is now investigating nearly 100 local politicians over visits to China that could violate election laws. Taiwan authorities are warning that links like this are just one way that China is trying to interfere with the upcoming presidential vote. As part of our China Factor series, Rick Glowert looks at how this issue is splitting society.
At his temple in central Taiwan, Zheng Mingkun has long called on the local goddess of peace to safeguard his country. He's a religious leader here in Taiwan, but is also friendly with the Communist Party ruling neighbouring China, which claims Taiwan as part of its sovereign territory and threatens to take by force.
那台湾跟中国是不可分离的，本来就是一家人嘛。那为了这个打仗才分开。那我希望说，因为我们都是炎黄子孙的，这个是不能改变的。
Zheng's opinion is becoming less common in a country whose existence is constantly under threat by China. But despite political differences, the two countries share deep historical and cultural ties. This is one of the largest temples in Taiwan to the sea goddess Mazu, an important deity worshipped both here in Taiwan and across the strait in China. This traditional folk religion is just one of the many things the two countries have in common. In the name of cultural exchange, Zheng often visits China and even meets with top Beijing officials. Links like this are now under scrutiny in Taiwan. The government here says China could be using them to interfere in Taiwan's upcoming national elections. Now, nearly 100 local politicians are being investigated over trips to China, paid for by Beijing.
你去旅游啊，落地招待，当然一定有它的目的嘛，那否则那所有的台湾人去大陆都全部落地招待就好啊。
What sort of relationship Taiwan should have with Beijing is defining the presidential race. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party candidate says Taiwan must beef up its defences to deter China, while the main opposition party, more friendly towards Beijing, says communication can avoid conflict. Both parties say voters are choosing between war and peace.
我对台湾民主有信心，因为我相信台湾人民对这块土地有一定的认可。
要看选民啊，选民选对了就是平安啊。
每次到选举的时候都是会有这样的情况发生，对，但是又是平安的，又度过一年。
For Zheng, the power of Mazu to maintain peace across the Taiwan Strait is larger than local politics.
那你今天你看加沙的土地还蛮大哦，那今天台湾四面是海哦，我们是没有路可以走。那今天我们不是怕战，我们是要可以大家坐下来稳定好好的谈。他会看到台湾就是真正的这么民主、这么自由，这个叫互相的学习。
The risk of war with China has hovered over Taiwan for decades. For many here, it has become a part of everyday life. But the upcoming election forces voters to confront this uncomfortable status quo and ask whether Taiwan's future is really in its own hands. Klein Wang, Pichi Zhuang, and Rick Lauert in Dajia, Taiwan for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's presidential elections are just 8 days away, and one of the biggest issues of the race is how the country can ensure its security. Bryn Thomas takes a look at what the candidates plan to spend on defense.
National security is one of the most serious issues facing Taiwan ahead of the upcoming election. And when voters head to the polls in January, they'll be deciding the future of Taiwan's defense. Faced with the threat of invasion from China, Taiwan has been increasing its defense budget over the last several years. But Beijing still spends 16 times more than Taipei does. That's why the candidates for the opposition Kuomintang, or KMT, are talking less about how much they plan to spend if elected and more about what they plan to spend the money on. The KMT's Hou You-yi and Zhao Xiaokang want to focus more on deterrence and stopping China from landing troops on the island. It's an approach highlighted by Zhao during a recent vice presidential debate.
你今天2.5%、3.5%、5%、50%，你也很难拼。但是是不是就算了？当然不是。我们就要集中我们的力量。所以我们一直主张要源头打击，就是我们的飞弹，我们的这个火力要能够打到大陆沿岸的这些基地，海上歼灭。如果你要用船来这个运送这个官兵的时候，海上就要歼灭你，滩岸阻绝，绝对不能让你上岸。
In recent years, Taiwan has worked towards spending 2.5% of its GDP on its military, with much of that going towards U.S. weapon systems. That effort began in 2016 when incumbent President Tsai Ing-wen of the Democratic Progressive Party took office. With her second and final term ending, analysts say the front-running presidential candidate and current vice president Lai Ching-te will continue this trend.
When you look at what the DPP has been doing under Tsai Ing-wen and what a Lai Ching-te administration would likely do on defense policy, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of daylight between the two of them. And I also might add that the Taiwanese voters tend to be very suspicious and worried about China and have seen what's gone on in Hong Kong under one country, two systems.
That worry is what's fueling calls from the Taiwan People's Party, or TPP, to spend even more on defense. That was made clear by Vice Presidential candidate Cynthia Wu when she repeated the party's goal of dedicating 3% of the GDP to security and military modernization.
那其实从实体的改革的部分呢，我们是想说，要均朝实战化、专业化、合理化、透明化的方向改革。
Although all three candidates have different plans for Taiwan's defense budget, they all recognize the growing threat from China. Now it's up to voters to decide which approach they want to manage that situation and if their preferred candidate can deter a war in the Taiwan Strait. Luffy Li, Jaime Okan, and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
3 Taiwanese military officers have been indicted after allegedly falsifying intelligence for financial gain. Officers from the Military Intelligence Bureau are accused of forging documents to swindle performance bonuses totaling more than $500,000 US. They've been charged for forgery and money laundering. Prosecutors say they have not ruled out further action against the accused.
部分赃款并透过不知情的他人账户洗钱。后续法院审理时，若有必要，将请求法院从重量刑，以正军纪。
New technology is weaponizing information in modern warfare. Jaime Okan explains how Taiwan can use data to defend itself in the event of a conflict.
Taiwan's defense strategy relies heavily on missiles. They can take out warships, fighter jets, and incoming enemy troops. The weapons are part of the country's push for an asymmetric advantage over China, which has a much larger military and seeks to bring Taiwan under its control. Asymmetric warfare emphasizes using information for precision strikes on targets that limit wasted ammunition. That's why Taiwan has invested heavily in missiles like these.
Asymmetric defense strategy also requires a lot of sensing capability, right? Because you're going to need to be able to find stuff for your shooters to shoot at.
Analysts say that aside from tanks and fighter jets, Taiwan should be investing more in what's known as ISR. That's information, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And it's the foundation for militaries around the world to get a complete picture of the area they are defending. This approach is critical for tracking enemy movements.
I think about with ISR is less of a deterrent preventative type of utility and more of a real-time targeting and strike capability. That in times of a conflict, if Taiwan has these anti-ship capabilities, if they don't have resilient and reliable ways to find a target, fix on a target, shoot a target, then again that equipment becomes irrelevant.
ISR systems include satellites, drones, and radars. These can target enemy ships and aircraft, but they can also gather intelligence on broader military activity and share it with friendly countries. This information is critical for making a decision during conflict.
So you need to provide a large scope so the senior leaders can, based on broadband understanding, when they talk to the neighboring countries, they can provide a very objective point of view. It's not only focused on Taiwan.
Taiwan is up against a powerful Chinese military, and the military has been increasingly active in the Asia-Pacific region over the past few years. With improved intelligence gathering, Taiwan can better work with partners like the US, Japan, and Korea to reduce the risk of conflict in the region. Devin Tai and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
People on 2 South Korean islands are evacuating after reports of North Korea shelling in nearby waters. South Korea's military says the North fired over 200 shells toward the border islands on Friday. Those shells landed in waters just north of the two countries' sea boundary without causing damage. Seoul held military drills in response. The shelling comes after Pyongyang suspended a military deal with the South late last year aimed at easing tensions on the peninsula. Russia is firing ballistic missiles provided by North Korea into Ukraine. That's according to newly declassified information from the United States. The White House says Russia has fired several of these missiles in the last week. Washington called the development a concerning escalation of Pyongyang's support for Moscow. North Korea has previously denied sending weapons to Russia. The information came just hours before footage was released of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visiting a missile factory with his daughter. China has lodged a protest with Myanmar after shelling injured 5 people in a Chinese border town. Stray artillery shells launched during fighting between Myanmar's military and rebel groups reached Nansan. Armed conflict has surged in Myanmar's north since late October. China has called for a ceasefire between the warring groups. Myanmar's military rulers have pardoned nearly 10,000 prisoners to mark the country's Independence Day. Relatives gathered outside a prison in the city of Yangon. Some political detainees are reportedly among those to be released, but they are just a small portion of the people who have been locked up for opposing the junta. Myanmar has been under military rule since 2021. The army's takeover has been met with resistance, which some observers say has turned into civil war. We're going to go into a quick commercial break, but after we come back... We take a look at a local tradition that's aiming to bring people back home.
Taiwan is voting for a future after President Tsai Ing-wen.
TaiwanPlus has reporters on the ground.
We'll bring you a reaction as the results roll in.
The whole world is watching. We've got you covered.
Join us on election night for our live special, Taiwan Votes, only on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for 2 bomb attacks in southern Iran. 84 people were killed and hundreds more wounded in the deadliest attack the country has seen since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. The Islamic State named and released an image of 2 masked men who said were responsible for planting the bombs. Some Iranian leaders earlier blamed Israel and the U.S. for the attack and vowed revenge on those responsible. The U.S. has denied involvement and says the blasts were similar to previous Islamic State attacks. Crews have begun clearing the charred wreckage of a Japan Airlines plane at Tokyo's Haneda Airport after a deadly collision with a Coast Guard aircraft. Investigators are looking into the cause of the crash, with U.S. aviation officials offering help with reading plane recorders. Early reports suggest the Coast Guard was not cleared for takeoff. The crash claimed the lives of 5 people on board the Coast Guard plane, while 379 people on board the Japan Airlines plane escaped before it was engulfed in flames. Scientists have made the first functional semiconductor out of graphene instead of silicon, a breakthrough that could mean a new era of electronics. Almost all modern devices rely on silicon chips, which may not be able to keep up with future computing demands. The researchers who made the discovery say graphene chips are not just a good alternative to silicon, but could make devices even faster and more energy efficient.
The good thing about graphene is not only can you make things smaller and faster and with less heat dissipation, you're actually using properties of electrons that are not accessible in silicon. So this is really a paradigm shift. It's a different way of doing electronics.
Taiwan is taking action after a fatal stabbing at a junior high school in December. The Education Ministry is considering 2 proposals to set up searches of students' belongings. One that would allow emergency searches of students suspected of carrying dangerous objects, and another that would target at-risk youth and students with juvenile records. To learn more about how to prevent school violence in Taiwan, our reporter Tiffany Wong spoke with Ed Youth Executive Director Sean Huang.
The government is now trying to come up with a plan to regulate and better check what students are bringing to school, if they're bringing any weapons, and especially students that have a juvenile record. So what do you think about the government singling out these specific type of students? Will that actually help reduce school violence incidents, or could that make things worse?
所以作为一个就是教育组织，我们其实更在乎的是大家有没有机会让每个人有均等的教育资源，不管他今天是一个曝险少年，或者是大家印象里面的一般人，其实我们都希望大家可以是有学习机会的，然后是可以好好长大的。
Do you think Taiwan's school discipline is getting more strict after this incident, or what's the change?
我其实没有很确定，但是我知道大家很紧张，就是因为大家有一个危机事件之后变得很恐慌吧，因为大家就觉得炸弹好像就在自己的身边，但是其实我们觉得没有这么严重。然后就我们观察到的高中学生而言，高中学生其实还好，当然国中端的情况我们不太清楚，但是我们知道的是教师端、家长端好像很紧张，那学生端目前我们的观察是还好。
So what do you recommend to schools that are looking to better protect their students from violent incidents like this recent one?
在这一次的事件里面，其实我们觉得更重要的应该是情绪教育，所以我们觉得要先知道自己生气了，那在生气的时候不要下任何冲动的决定，我们可以控制的是后面的那个行为决定。那我们觉察情绪，然后知道有哪些行为可以选之后，我们再为自己做一个负责任的选择。这是我们觉得除了可以保护校园，也可以保护 就是整个社会的方法。
That was our reporter Tiffany Wong speaking with Ed Youth Executive Director Sean Huang on violence in Taiwanese schools. A recent survey shows 86% of foreign students in Taiwan are willing to stay and work in the country after they graduate. TaiwanPlus went to learn more from foreign nationals studying at a Taipei university. Yvonne Young has the story.
People from different countries, all in Taiwan for one purpose, to study.
So I'm from the Caribbean. I'm from the Twin Island Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I'm here in Taiwan studying in the GMC program.
These are just a few of over 100,000 foreign students in the country. A recent survey done by the Association of International Cultural and Educational Exchange Taiwan says 86% of foreign students in Taiwan are willing to stay and work after graduation. The association collected around 2,000 responses last year.
Well, I'm currently studying journalism and mass communication at Mingtran. I'm thinking about staying to work and maybe network for some while because I do want to stay in the journalism industry. I do want to stay in the news broadcasting or the investigative journalist aspect of it. So I think I will stay. Like Taiwan has some great places, some great companies, some great connections.
According to the survey, nearly 22% of respondents hope to find employment in a specific field, while a similar number just want to find a job quickly.
Because Taiwan offers a lot of opportunities. Like while you're in school, companies literally come and recruit you. They see your potential, they see what you can become, and they actually believe in you and basically gives you incentives to stay, which is very attractive to us who are from small developing countries, who basically have a chance to actually build a solid career in an international country.
Taiwan approved a plan in 2023 to attract more international talent by recruiting foreign students. It offers scholarships and industry-academia joint programs while helping students find places to stay.
Most people said that they would like to stay and work in Taiwan for long term. We have a great opportunities, like job opportunities, because we do need a lot of international students to help out. Yeah, so I guess that there are many things that we can attract students to come.
With this new policy, the government aims to attract 320,000 foreign students by 2030, with 210,000 of them willing to stay and work after graduation.
积极的去整合一些毕业之后的就业机会，我相信这对于说留下这一些优秀的外国学生来讲是相当有帮助的。
By offering scholarships, opportunities, and benefits, Taiwan may have the power to compete for foreign talent from around the world. Chris Ma, Sandy Chi, and Yvonne Young for TaiwanPlus.
How do you attract people back to a remote village in the mountains? Well, for one neighborhood in southern Taiwan, it was a matter of going back to their roots and embracing local tradition. If you've never heard of Muzi neighborhood in southern Taiwan's Kaohsiung, there's a good chance you're not the only one. In 2023, only 684 people were registered as living there. But the actual population was less than 400 people, with nearly half of them over age 65. Most of Taiwan's younger people migrate to urban areas in search of better job opportunities, leaving places like Muzi with a declining elderly population. But Muzi is not yet ready to leave its legacy to the history books. The community came up with a way to attract people back to the area. A group of people, mostly in their 70s, set out for the nearby mountains. They're looking for bamboo to make hand torches. The hand torches made from this bamboo stem from a uniquely Muzi tradition. And just like how the adults used those torches to bring children home from school back in the day, so too do these torches guide people back to Muzi now. The Muzi Torch Festival has been held annually since 2018, but it went on hiatus for 2 years because of the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2023, hundreds of people from all over Taiwan flocked to the remote neighborhood to participate in the proud tradition. Torches were handed out, lit, and people walked around the mountains lighting up the surrounding area. including to the now defunct Muzi Elementary School. Along the way, locals who aren't used to seeing so many people in their community got a renewed sense of hope.
感恩又感动，很高兴的。为什么？因为难得有这么热闹，他们会过来，我真的，人家都来报名，真的是很高兴的，我都高兴到哭泣。
Tradition rejuvenated a community that was on the brink of being forgotten. The Muzi Torch Festival has given locals something to look forward to each year.
感覺真正足感動。這個火把活動，我的期待是講哦。
This festival is perhaps a representation of what makes communities like Muzi so appealing. There's no fancy tricks or gimmicks here. It all comes down to what makes Muzi, Muzi. Organizers say nearly 700 people attended this year's Torch Festival, almost double the local population. And that's about it for this edition of Taiwan Plus News. But before we go, we're going to leave you with images of survivors of the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel taking a therapeutic dive in the Red Sea. I'm Leslie Liao. Take care, and I'll see you next time.